Good evening, I'm Paul Adler. This year, Missouri voters will see a new Amendment 3 on the ballot. It's one designed to roll back what voters approved just last year. Missourians passed the original Amendment 3 to lift the state's abortion ban. The new Amendment 3 would do the opposite, reinstating the ban with certain exceptions. Our Missouri Capitol reporter Hannah Falcon talked with marchers today who want the abortion ban to come back.
3,000 anti-abortion advocates from all over Missouri are gathered here at the state capitol. Today, they're spreading the word on that new vote that Missourians will take come November to vote on abortion once again. The sound of drums, prayers, and marching feet fill the air in Jefferson City. This group's purpose is clear:
to make sure people understand the truth.
Longtime anti-abortion advocate Bonnie Lee stands with her fellow Missourians of all ages to educate people on the new Amendment 3. It's the opposite of the Amendment 3 passed by Missouri voters in 2024, which Lee says was misleading.
It was written with full of legalese that most people had no idea what they were signing.
A yes vote on the new Amendment 3 would reinstate Missouri's abortion ban.
Missourians went to the ballot box and voted to enshrine access to reproductive health care in our Constitution.
Inside the Capitol, Democratic Party leader Ashley Aune says this is an attempt by the majority party to reverse the vote of the people.
Republicans are hell-bent on banning abortion in this state.
Completely contrary to the messaging on the Capitol lawn, Aune says the new Amendment 3 would put women's lives at risk.
And it is about making sure that women in Missouri can get the safe, quality care that they deserve.
Missouri thinks life is sacred and women should not be treated worse simply because they're having an abortion.
The new Amendment 3 does have exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Missourians will see it on their ballot in November. Reporting in Jefferson City, I'm Hannah Falcon.